welcome back to our channel. This is episode 4 of the real estate investment series, and in this particular episode we're going to be talking about buying land for those of you who are interested in owning your own land.
Yes, absolutely. And the first thing we want to cover is location. There was a book called Strategic Relocation Guide, and this book is very interesting because it lists all of the states and different things that's governing each state. Like, for instance, one state may get more rain than other states. Now, that's important if you plan on having a farm, right? Rain is important. And so you want to make sure that you're looking at these in this guide, because some states don't hardly get any rain. Like if you moving out toward you buying land in the Arizona area, you see, well, it's going to be different than buying land in like Tennessee or buying land in Ohio, and every state is different. You understand? So location is the key.
Yeah, with that strategic relocation guide as well, it gives you the laws of a particular state as well.
Yes.
So there's a number of things to look out. We're just mentioning this book in case this is important to some of you. A lot of you are probably just interested in getting land where you are, which is fine too. But that book is a great resource for anyone who is looking to relocate to another area.
Yeah, I want to say this real quickly. Now think about this, right? One of the things the book shows is gun laws.
Yes.
Now, think about that gun laws, because in some states have open carry, right? And other states don't. Some states you have to have a permit. Some states you can't even buy a gun unless you contact the police department or something. It was, and that's how it is in Chicago in some of the states, you know. And so that's why you got to make sure that you get. That's how it is in Illinois, should I say? So you got to make sure that, man, what are the laws governing guns? What are the laws governing and some states have high corruption in the system too. And this book tells you all of that.
Right. So one thing you want to determine too, if you're trying to buy land, is what are you going to be using the land for?
Yes.
After you've determined where you're going to go, okay, and looking at all the stuff that we mentioned with the strategic relocation guide. Of course, there's a lot more information in that book than what we talked about. But what are you buying the land for? Is it strictly for farming? Do you plan to build there, or are you going to establish a community there? Whatever your reason for buying this land, you want to know all of the ins and outs before making an offer.
Yes, absolutely. You want to know what you're getting into.
Right.
And guess what? Do your research on that land, okay? Because sometimes people go out and they buy land, and then the next thing you know, the first rainy day comes, the land is flooded. You don't want any flood land, okay? You want to make sure that you're getting land in a good area that you don't have to worry about floods and things like that. You got to know what's going on in that area too. For instance, some properties out here can have wild boars, are very dangerous. So you got to know everything that's going on with that particular property.
Right. And in terms of raining and floods too, they have to let you know if the property is in a flood zone.
Yes.
The real estate agent that lists the property has to let you know if it is in a flood zone. Now, some property, a portion of the property may be in a flood zone, but they may have areas that they've perked that you are able to build on. But when you're buying that and you're planning on farming it, and you may say, well, I can build right here, you still want to know what's going on with the rest of the land, because even though you may have your home built here with your driveway and all of that, if this land over here on the side of your home is swampy all of the time, or is subject to flooding all of the time, then that's going to ruin your goals of having or using it as cropland. So
and then
do your research.
And you want to get flooded in. Either your house may be safe, but all around you can't get out because it's flooded up. It's your driveway, you know.
We saw that before.
Yeah, we seen it.
I remember we were driving past during a rainy season. We were driving past this farm land and home. The house was kind of sitting up on the hill a little bit. But as we looked around their land, we were like, how the heck are they going to get out of there if they
tractors
need to?
And everything was just in water. You know, I said, man, this is their barn. Mm-hmm. I said, that's horrible.
So, yeah, buying land, if you're in an area that's not subject to those kind of things, then, I mean, it should be well known. Like I know various areas of Michigan where we came from, I don't remember much flooding at all.
Yeah.
Okay, not saying that it doesn't happen, but I just don't remember it. We lived out in the country. After leaving the Detroit area, we moved out to the country. And so we were kind of familiar with what the land was like in these particular regions anyway. And so you want to make sure that if you're going to be in a particular area that you're not familiar with, that you familiarize yourself with that area before just investing in land. Many times if you have rock bottom low prices on land, it could be because there are problems or issues with the land. Okay, so due diligence and homework are a necessity for any purchase, not just buying land, but for any purchase. Do your due diligence. Don't just look at a price. I remember years ago, a young couple had contacted us, and they were buying, I think, 40 acres or something in, was it Arizona? Mm-hmm. And the price was unbelievably low. And we tried to explain to them, said, well, I mean, they were telling us everything that came with the land. But we had to inform them. We said, well, you're buying into inconveniences right now. The fact that it has a huge water cistern on the property lets you know that they have to have water hauled in because they don't get a lot of rainfall. You have to ask yourself, is this something I'm willing to deal with?
Yeah, it was a lot of desert. Matter of fact, we saw a lot of sand. And
it was nothing but
sand everywhere, no green vegetation. It's like, well, you got to think about that now. That might be a good bug out that you can run to if something go down. But if you can't plant there, you can't grow anything, and, you know, there's no rain, then you got to think of everything.
Right.
You understand?
Right. What is 40 acres that you can't, if you can't do anything with it?
Yes.
Now, it's not to say that you can't, because there are people who have enough money to make that kind of lifestyle work. They have the water shipped in or trucked in. They have rain catchment systems that they've installed. What that does is when you do get rain, you're going to catch as much of it as you can. But if your cisterns or your holding tanks or containers aren't big enough and you start to run low, that can be something that can be very detrimental to your survival.
Yes.
Or the survival of your crops or whatever. So you want to consider all of those things. For us, we wouldn't necessarily want to do things that way. You would have to have really deep pockets for something like that to really, truly work. Yeah. Again, we know that there are people doing it, but they may have the money and the means to just have that water shipped in or to have the catchment systems in place to catch rain. But if you're one who just want to keep it simple, you want to just be somewhere where the rain is already falling, then, hey, you definitely want to consider all of those things.
One thing I want to say, too, is that in looking for a land, back to locationing, I want to say this. I don't know if you want to buy land that's near a military base or that's near a nuclear plant.
Right.
You see, you got to think about those kind of things. You know, you buy this beautiful land, you get a good deal. You better know what's going on around you. Right. You know what I'm saying? Around that land. Because you don't want to move into an area that you're going to be like, oh, man, I had no idea. You know, and I'm going to keep it real. We're people of color, right? We just can't go anywhere, okay? Let's keep that real, okay?
Right.
You just can't say, oh, there's some beautiful land over here. I'm going to just go and buy this land and move there. Next thing you know, you have problems with folk that are not color, right? And these folk don't want you there. You understand what I'm saying? When they see you there, you know, one story that's so sad, I want to bring it up. When the two brothers went to this, brought this land, and they went to the property to view their own property.
That they had already bought.
Right.
They weren't just looking at it. They had already paid for it. They had
already paid for this property, and they were on their own property looking at a barn, and some guy came out of somewhere and just killed both of them.
Yeah, this older white guy, he says he didn't know what they were doing and why they were on the property, and he felt threatened. And so he came and shot both of these men and killed them. And, you know, that was a horrific story. It's like, how can you just kill someone for looking at land, especially you know the land is for sale?
Yes, exactly.
So it's really sad, but we do have to consider these things.
You got to consider it, yeah.
Anywhere we go in this country, in this world for that matter,
yes.
These are the things that we have to consider. It's sad, but being indigenous to this planet, and you have to worry about people doing something like that because they fear you just because you're standing there looking.
Yes.
That's really sad, but that shows you that there are other elements. It's sad that most people can look at a real estate investment video or buying land or buying property video and just talk about the normal, fluffy, sunshiny day stuff, right? But we have to think about these things. How do the people in the surrounding area feel about people of color? That is really sad that this is what it is, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so there are websites. One website called City Data. It allows you to look up the demographics of people in the area to see how many so-called black people, white people, Asians, Latinos, or whatever. So you can kind of get a good idea of the racial makeup or mix of a particular city or state area or county or whatever to make a determination on whether or not you want to go there. Now, there are some areas that have only a 1% black population. There are some areas that have a 10% black population. Some areas have a 20 or 30% black population. Some areas have a 50, 60, 70, or 80% black population.
Yes.
Of course, those are usually the more city areas that have the higher black populations. But citydata.com, I believe it is the name of the site, or is it city-data? Anyway, you can look it up. You can Google it. But it will help you to determine what an area's makeup is, what the demographics are. It even lists the crimes for a particular area. So that's some good information to know when looking for land as well. Another thing, Watchman mentioned military bases, but you also want to, if you're trying to buy land in an area where it's like a lot of farms, you want to make sure that you're not near any like pig processing plants.
Yes.
Or chicken farms that are too close, because sometimes the stench in the air can just be overwhelming. So it's a number of things to look for. I know sometimes we want to just go and say, oh, I like that land, just buy it and be done with it. But you have to consider so many things.
You got to consider all these things because these things are necessary, you know. You got and then when you're checking out the population of an area, because you're a person of color, you got to make sure there's some people of color in that area, not one or two. You know, you don't want people to be shocked when they see you. You know what I mean? You wanna know that they used to seeing black folk around, so it ain't no big deal if you get land in that area. So that's what you're looking for, you know.
Right. Now another thing we wanted to talk about in terms of buying land, what's on the property.
Yes.
If you're buying raw land, usually there's going to be nothing on the property.
Nothing at all.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with buying raw land either.
You just got to make sure you got some type of way of getting on the property, because if there's no like a dirt road leading onto the property,
or gravel
road of some sort, then you may have a hard time taking your vehicle up on there, even viewing it. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to get on there, the land, and you get stuck, and you out there, you know.
Right. But when you're buying raw land, there are a number of things to consider. You want to make sure that you can build on it first.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to do a perk test. A perk test determines whether or not the water sits on top of the property or if it's going to sink in, or what type of system, like a septic system or a sewage treatment that you're going to have on your property.
Yes.
It's other things involving a perk test too, so I encourage you to look it up.
Yes.
Look up what it is, what's involved in it, and what it takes care of, okay? Some areas may not require that you do a perk test, okay?
Yes.
But some areas do. I remember when we lived in Michigan, and we were looking at a particular house. We were looking at some land. They said this land is going to require a perk test because it has some drainage issues. And so we just kind of remember, it was on Lois Lane in Southfield. Remember that one?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
But we decided to just, do something different. And we ended up not even getting or pursuing that property. But you want to make sure that the property is going to be able to have a home built on it, period, right?
And here you got to also notice here too, some properties have a high water table.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when we lived in Michigan in Belleville, it had a high water table, so you can't just build a basement in Belleville.
Right.
Okay.
Some
you would have to do an
areas.
above ground basement and bring the dirt around.
Right.
That's how you would have to do it in some of those areas in Michigan, not Michigan,
Belleville.
In Belleville. You just
Right.
can't. Now I knew someone who did that. He was a builder, and he took a chance, and he dug himself a basement, and guess what? His basement would flood. Every time it would rain, his basement would flood. He could end up not even being able to use his basement.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, big, beautiful ranch with a messed up basement. Yeah. And so you gotta do your research when you know what's on the property. Now, some property may come with a barn on it. Mm-hmm. You know, like you have some farmers who may have extra land and they already put a barn on it. They may already have a little shack or something on it, and what do you call a shed on it or whatever, right?
But no house.
Because they broke it off of their farm and said, okay, we want to sell a little bit of this property. Mm-hmm. Those can be excellent deals, you know.
Yeah, because they may have certain services already there. Yes. Because it costs money to have electricity brought into your property, right? And so if there's electricity already brought or fed to the property, if there's a septic tank or sewer already on the property, you're ahead of the game. If water is already brought to the property, whether it's through a well or through local city or county water, these are expenses you're not going to have to deal with when you go to build on that property. Another thing I wanted to talk about too, if you're planning on having any type of community or putting any type of tiny homes or trailers or anything like that, or travel trailers, you want to find out from the county what is required. Yeah. Can you do this? If you do it with only your family, are there any particular rules governing this? If you're bringing outsiders, what are your rules governing this? Okay. Yeah. Once you find these things out, then you can make a determination on whether or not you want to be in that particular area. One property that we had, they said that you can have your trailers and all of that there, but you would have to establish it as a RV park or something. Yes. And once you apply for that or whatever, each property would have to have its own pad, whether it's a gravel pad or a concrete pad, to put each individual tiny home or travel trailer on. Yes. And then each property had to have its own septic, I think it was. Yep. And water lines had to be brought into each.
And that stuff can get costly.
It can get costly.
It can get very costly. And so you just got to make sure you know what's going on with your with the building ordinances and things like that. Because let me show you this, right? Think about this, right? Some properties, right? Some areas may require permits for everything. Yes. Now that's how it is in Michigan. Mm-hmm. In Michigan, everything you do, you can't put a fence up. You can't dig a hole. You can't do anything unless you pull a permit. That's everything. That's how it is there.
Or get permission.
That's right. But in some areas, you don't need no permission from anyone. Now, that's the strategic location guide tells you a lot of this stuff in the book. Right. It lets you know in this state, okay, they, and some properties, when you go to buy them, they'll actually say it in the listing on it.
No restrictions.
No restrictions, no building restrictions. So, where you can go there and build what you want, But some areas, think about this, what if you wanted a dome home, right? Some areas might not allow you to do a dome home. What if you want to do earthship? Those tire homes. Mm-hmm. Well, some areas you might not be able to do a tire home, right? You can't just put no tire home up in Michigan. Right. You know what I'm saying? It ain't gonna happen, Mm-hmm. And so you got to make sure what you dealing with, right? Some areas may only require that you can pull a permit for electrical. Right. But everything else you can do yourself. The plumbing and all kinds of other stuff, even building it. Mm-hmm. You can pretty much do yourself, and they don't care. And I've seen, we've been all over this United States. Okay, we're not all over, but we've been in some areas, enough places, and we've seen some homes that it looked like somebody just threw them up. And it's like, how did they even let them throw this? Because there's no building restrictions. Right. You understand? So
there are pockets of freedom. That's what Michael Reynolds calls them, pockets of freedom in this country that will allow you as a landowner to build what you want. And in those pockets of freedom, some people build elaborate, beautiful earthships. Some people build shacks. So you just want to make sure of what your goal is. You might not even want to build on it at all. You might just want to buy it for farming. Just everything, whatever your goal or your intention is, make sure that you do your due diligence and determine what you're using the land for. One thing we wanted to talk about, too, was acres.
Yes, listen. because that acres thing, I'm going to tell you right now, okay, we know, okay, we know, okay. At first, when we had some 17, 18 acres, let me tell you something, that's a lot of land to keep up.
It is.
That's a lot of work. Let me tell you something, you can have a tractor with a finish mower on it or a brush hog on it. Every 2 weeks, you're going to be all over that land just cutting grass, cutting down stuff. And I'm telling you,
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Now, the only thing that can help you to minimize that work is if you have some type of livestock that's going to be on there eating it down.
Yeah.
Without that livestock, that stuff will grow up and it'll become a nightmare all over again.
And guess what? When that stuff grow up, guess what grows in it? Ticks and other animals, those little things. And you got to keep that stuff cut down.
Right. And so I remember when we were buying that property, it was an REO.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a real estate owned or bank owned property. The bank just wanted it off their books. And so we did our strategy.
They wanted it off bad too, yeah.
Yeah, we did our strategy and we
threw
a low ball price in there. And because we were dealing with the listing agent.
Listen.
She pulled for us.
Yep.
And she convinced the lender to just give it to them. They're ready to do this because we threw a low ball price. And they went for it.
Yeah.
And another reason why they went for it too, the property was so overgrown.
It was overgrown, and not just overgrown, they left a mess.
Yes.
They left piles of mess there. There was a trailer home that got burned down, and most of the mess was gone, but you could still see parts of the burned stuff that was there.
Yeah.
And so the property needed a lot of cleaning up.
Yes.
And it was brush everywhere. There's so much brush you couldn't even see the pond that was on the property, you know?
The real estate agent didn't even know it was a pond because she's like, I'm not going over there. If you guys, we only knew it was because we could see, we were like, oh, and when we saw the aerial of the property, we were like, what is that? That looked like a pond. And so when we asked her, she's like, I don't know. I'm just listing the property, and if you guys think it's a pond, you want to go over there, I'm not going, but you can go. And so once we cut it down, it was definitely a pond.
And one thing too, that aerial view is important. Go to anyway. If you're looking at a property, you can go to Google Earth. You can go to other places where you can look at these properties, the aerial view. Zoom out on that aerial view and look around the whole area and see what's in that area. Because it could be a pig farm over there. It could be this over there, that over there. It could be some weird things going on. You just want to know what you're near and what's around that property. Now, one property we were looking at. Let me tell you what was strange about it. It was the one in Illinois. Was it Illinois? Yeah. We hit that. Listen.
Wait. You just want the one in Missouri?
It's in Missouri, the one where we saw that funny, look like a flood thing that happened on the...
oh, yeah, that was Illinois.
That was Illinois, yeah. And when we zoomed way out, we said, man, what is this here? It was some weird, looked as if this whole one area had flooded real bad off of the river.
Right.
And so we were like...
This house is not too far. It's like, what happens on a horrible rainy day?
Yeah. So we decided against that one because of those particular things that we saw on the overhead, you know.
Another thing too, we saw a property in Missouri that it was a nice property, but it had a cell phone tower right there. They said that the previous owners had leased that land, and they have like a 99-year lease with that house or that land, and it's right there on the land. And we were like, we did some research. We were like, a cell phone tower is not safe to be that close on your land like that. And so those were some of the things that we looked at, you know. And so we just want you all to do your homework. And then also you want to determine how much. So we were talking about how much land. You might see 100 acres for sale in certain regions, and it might be dirt cheap. We've seen dirt cheap land, 100 acres, but it's like, what are you getting with that 100 acres, and what type of maintenance is going to be required? If you don't need that much land, and you know you can't take care of that much land.
Now guess what? That could be a good deal if this. Now watch this. Let's say, there you go. Let's say that you got 10 acres is clear.
Right.
Where you can build on, no flooding is going on the land or nothing like that, right? But the other 90 acres is wooded. Well, you got a prize right there because that wood is worth some money.
Yes.
Okay? And that wood, you can use it to heat your homes or whatever,
And hunting.
And hunting, that's right, because there's going to be deer up in them woods and all kinds of things. So that's a good thing to think about, right?
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
And so the last thing we wanted to talk about is just making sure that wherever you buy property, know and understand the county ordinances.
That's right.
Before even looking at the property, if you're interested, call the county and ask them whatever question needs to be asked. Can I have additional homes on the land, or can I do this? Can I do that? Can I farm the land? Most of the time, if you're buying land in a rural area, you can farm it.
Right.
But you just want to find out if there are any building codes that you need to be aware of, because there are some areas where you don't have to pull a permit for hardly anything.
Yeah.
Some things you do, but not hardly anything. But other areas, like Watchman said early on, you have to pull a permit for everything.
Every little thing.
So every state has a different set of rules and laws governing these things. And that's where that book, the Strategic Relocation Guide, comes in handy. And also going directly to each county that you might be looking at property in, and looking at either their website or calling someone up, having a conversation and seeing what's what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guide is really important, because I remember when we were thinking about Illinois, land in Illinois, and the gun laws were so bad, I had to call the police department in Illinois and was talking with them about that, and it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. You just can't have a gun in Illinois like that.
Even if you're coming from another state where it was okay, you can't just take your guns there and say,
Yeah,
well,
you
I already
sure
had
can't.
these, and no, it doesn't work like that. So.
Yeah, it was just crazy, and so I felt like I want to get into hunting, I practice and get things like that, and it's like it just didn't work out,
Right.
But anyway, I hope this one was a blessing to you, knowing how to buy land.
We thank you all for joining us.
Yes.
And this will end this episode on investing in real estate, buying land. With that, we will say shalom.
Shalom, family.
Be sure to ring the bell to be notified of new uploads on this channel, and also comment, share, like, and subscribe.